In '54, when they changed the pledge, I remember it happening, but I don't remember the justification, if any, when they gave it.
Justification is because we want to have our majoritarian religious view.
There doesn't even seem to be any brainwashing or anything that went on. They just had...
What they did, I mean, you have to understand, this is in the middle of the 50s. This is the McCarthy era, okay? And we're talking about godless communists, right? Which was a major insult. You know, again, the two words were synonymous, atheist and communist. Right? We're thought of as the same. An atheist, and if you were a communist, you'd lose your job. You'd blacklisted already. Nobody could be a communist. So you couldn't be an atheist either. And in that span, remember, we had a country, what was it, 180 years or so that we didn't have any problem. All of a sudden, in the 10-year span from in the 50s, actually it was less than that, it was from 52 to 56, we got a National Day of Prayer, we got a prayer room put into the Capitol building, we got Under God and the Pledge of Allegiance, we got In God We Trust mandated for all our coins and currency, we got In God We Trust as our national motto, we got the first postage stamp that ever had anything with In God with references to God, a religious postage stamp. And this is all in the space of like 5 years. And the theory, the reason they said was because we want to differentiate ourselves from those atheistic communists, the Russians, right? But what we did was did it, and that's fine. I think that, you know, Russia, the Soviet Union was a totalitarian state. We should differentiate ourselves. But the difference between the United States and the Soviet Union was not that we believed in God and they didn't believe in God. We believed in freedom, that everybody should be able to believe whatever they want. And they believed, no, you had to be an atheist. But the fact that they had to be an atheist was no different from the Taliban saying you have to be a Muslim, or the Spain during the Crusades that said you had to be during the Inquisition that said you had to be a Catholic. Right? It wasn't about what you have to be, it was just that you were condemned to be whatever it is that the state said. And that was the difference between the United States and the Soviet Union. But Congress didn't see it that way. They said, no, the difference is between we believe we're Christians or Judeo-Christians and they don't believe in God. I mean, think about it today. George Bush goes out of his way to say this war on terror is not against Islam. Can you imagine that, you know, Congress now saying, well, we're one nation under Jesus because we want to differentiate ourselves from the terrorists. And, you know, people go crazy about that. But atheists still were secular citizens. Nobody really minded back then. There was no atheistic voice. So that's where we were in the 50s. Let me get on to the other case, because the other case is really cool. Do you want to take a break for a minute? I don't know how long I know I have a fair amount of time. So, okay. Want to stretch? Okay. Want to pledge? Okay, so here's how it is. The really cool thing about all this is that Congress has given us the tools to turn over all these things. It's so ironic. It's really great. First of all, when the pledge case came out from the Ninth Circuit, right, you know, their argument is that, well, this isn't really religious and it was done for historical purposes, you know, because all our founders, you know, believed in God, which makes it about, you know, is about as relevant as the fact that all our founders were white. And all our founders were men. What's that got to do with the Constitution that they created? Absolutely nothing. And I'm not sure they all believed in God, but let's assume they did. You couldn't say you were an atheist. By the way, when our nation was founded, we were ruled under English common law. And if you look at Blackstone's commentaries that talks about the common law of England at the time, it was subject to fine or imprisonment or other infamous corporal punishment if you denied the being of God. And so you couldn't be an atheist. It was illegal to be an atheist back then. So I'm not sure that the fact that we don't know how many atheists there were at the founding of our nation means anything, because, you know, we were subject to fine or other infamous corporal punishment. So in any event, Congress came out, and if you read their declarations and their resolutions since this case came out, they all say, well, you know, we have the Mayflower Compact, which I already talked about, and all, you know, George Washington prayed to God, and all these other things with God. Therefore, it's just our history. It's not that we want to push this monotheism idea. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's just our history, and that's why we're doing it. And it's patriotic to worship God. Why it's patriotic to worship God, I have no idea. I mean, the fact that we stuck this thing in our patriotic Pledge of Allegiance doesn't make this thing patriotic. You know, if we had kids every morning, instead of going, I pledge allegiance unto God, we went 2 times 2 unto God equals 4, 3 times 3 unto God equals 9. I don't think we would say that unto God is mathematical. All right? Why does it become patriotic? Because we stuck it in the middle of our pledge. I don't know, but that's the logic I go through. So in any event, afterwards, what I want to read this stuff I just pulled out. This is from the Senate after the case came out on June 26, 2002. On June 27th, well, June 26th, they already were bent out of shape. There's tons of pages in the congressional record where they start talking about this ridiculous decision. President Bush is in the middle of a news conference with Vladimir Putin. The first thing he talks about, he's the leader of the Soviet of Russia, and he talks about the pledge case, calls it ridiculous. And Congress goes all crazy, and they say, okay, we're going to come out to the steps of the Capitol building and pledge allegiance in unison to show that we believe under God. And they all go under God, and they emphasize under God because it's religious, because it's historic, not because says anything to do with God. And so, so then the next day, they get Robert Byrd, okay, the senior senator who just this past week became the longest, the senator with the longest longevity of any senator in the history of the United States. He's 50-something years. And he is he's really good, actually, for us, because he keeps talking about how Jesus and God and all this other wonderful stuff. And he comes up and he says that I, for one, am not going to stand for this country being ruled by a bunch of atheists. If they don't like it, let them leave. How's that for a nice way to treat people that you're representing? And he says that, then he also said one line, they're not going to have their way. The people of the United States are not going to stand for this. What are the atheists? What are they, North Korean? What is it? The people of the United States are not going to stand for this. I mean, he doesn't see that this is how offensive this is. You know, like they're not going to have their way. The blacks won't. You know, the people of the United States won't stand for water fountains that we share. What, blacks something from other country? It's absurd. Anyhow, that's what he says. And then he goes and he leads the chaplain. Okay, remember we have this chaplain paid for with tax dollars who's going to lead the Congress in prayer before every session. So when the Senate comes out, the Senate chaplain is about to give the opening prayer, because they always start with a prayer to God. So Robert Byrd says, the prayer to Almighty God, the supreme judge of the world, will be led by the Senate chaplain, Reverend Dr. Lloyd Lloyd Ogilvie. Excuse me one second. Okay, so Lloyd Ogilvie is about to lead us to the supreme judge of the world. This is what he said. Almighty God, creator, sustainer, and providential source of all our blessings, there is no separation between God and state. With gratitude, we declare our motto, in God we trust. Thank you. That's one for our side. We're going to use that later, okay? When they tell us this isn't religious, we'll remember that the chaplain in Congress, in a prayer to God, said, in God we trust. Sounds religious to me. We'll use that one. Though that trust may be expressed in different religions, we proclaim you as ultimate sovereign of our nation. It is with reverence that in a moment we will repeat the words of commitment to trust to you, which are part of our Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, one nation under God, indivisible. Thank you again. We're going to use that one in court. Keep talking. I love this stuff. As we declare our convictions in the pledge, we affirm that patriotism is an essential expression of our trust in you, specifically for today and its pressing agenda and challenges. We affirm that we are one Senate, united under you to lead a nation that is free to say confidently again, in God we trust. So people don't know this, Ogilvie and I are really tight. And I told him, can you bring in a lot of in God we trust? That's right, because I wanted to challenge that. So he did this for me. And then after they're done with this pledge, this prayer to God that you and I paid for, Tom Daschle gets up and he says afterwards, just in case you don't think that this is, maybe it's just the chaplain that's saying this and voicing his own opinion, Mr. President, he's talking to Robert Byrd, I know I speak for all our colleagues, in thanking Chaplain Ogilvie for his wonderful prayer this morning. And by the way, everyone shows up for this one. Right? If you actually go to Congress for these opening prayers that are so important that we should have tax dollars paying for them, right? It's like nobody there. You guys, we have more people here than there are in the Senate almost ever. Right? They have like 6 or 7 senators that happen to be there for some other reason, and they have the thing's jam-packed on June 27, 2002, because they're going to show how we love this Pledge of Allegiance, which has nothing to do with God. That's why we're here to come to the chaplain and pray to God with us. So anyhow, Daschle says, he spoke for all of us, in case he didn't get it when he said speak for all of our colleagues. In thanking this, says he spoke for all of us. We are one nation under God, and we reaffirm that today, as Americans, not as Republicans or as Democrats, we do so proudly. Thank you very much. So again, all right, when they tell us that this has nothing to do with religion, why are you all unanimously telling us that you want to join with the chaplain to pledge to one nation under God? Sounds